John, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Thanks for having me.
So I want to dig into really two parts of your work history. It sounds like an interview.
Yeah.
But I want to start with the Orca Pacific journey, and then I want to dig into what you're doing now.
Yeah.
So, which is, I believe, starting 5 different B2B agencies at the same time.
Over a 2-year period of time. We're giving ourselves a little bit of time between each one to get it kind of up and going before we jump into the next. So yeah.
Okay, so let's explore the foundation to this, which I believe was Orca Pacific. So if it would be good to just share a couple of sentences overview of what the business was, and then I want to dig into how you grew it, etc.
Yeah, for sure. So Orca Pacific, really at its core was a full service Amazon agency. In the early days, it was kind of a little bit of a different thing. And then in the very later days, we actually expanded out to other commerce platforms. But, the kind of the headline is it was at its kind of peak, it was a 8-figure, 100-person full service Amazon agency, that I started and ran for actually over a decade, if you include the sort of, sale and integration period with Media Monks. So yeah, those, a lot of time, a lot of lessons learned. Happy to go into whatever you want.
So you do the organic Amazon store optimization, and then you would also do paid.
Yeah. So our approach was to basically do everything humanly possible to maximize the Amazon channel on behalf of our clients. So, there were a lot of agencies that kind of entered the Amazon space from different places. Some did creative, some did, ads. For us, it was always about doing everything, including the weird stuff that didn't really fit in a traditional agency model. The sort of the operational issues, the kind of consultative stuff, frankly, representing our clients in big, hairy negotiations. So really operating as an agent or a broker in a more sort of traditional sense in some cases, more of a middleman. So we really, we aim to do it all. And frankly, that served us really well because we did a lot of really hard stuff that was very difficult for a traditional agency or just a paid media agency to understand and to tackle. And we had, very large clients that were with us for a decade as a result.
Yeah, I love any way to make your agency slightly different than competitors. And especially if it can be focused on one specific thing. And so now it's just super clear you did the Amazon channel, even if it kind of went outside of marketing. And then that probably also helps you with marketing the business because you could just talk about Amazon, everything Amazon.
Correct.
It was very smart.
Yeah, it was very clarifying, I think, for the market, but also for our internal team to just go this is what we do. We want to be the best in the world at Amazon. That was our thing. It was if you can say it in one sentence, which I'm still working on for the new business, by the way, but if you have the clarity to describe what you do with one sentence, we're the best in the world at Amazon. It's what we do. It worked.
Internal clarity is very important.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how did your role evolve throughout those roughly 10 years of running it?
Yeah, man. So I was actually thinking about this yesterday, kind of the phases of an agency. So, I think in the beginning, I'm sure any agency entrepreneur listening to this would relate. In the beginning, almost everyone starts as sort of an accidental agency owner. You're basically a person that knows how to do a thing. And then you're oh, people will pay me to do this thing. And so you're basically a consultant. That's functionally how I started. And, and then there's more demand, or you figure out a way to drive more demand for your services and you hire some people to help you. And they're sort of mini yous, to offload some of the work to. And then all of a sudden, you have maybe 8, 10, 12 people and, a couple $1 million in revenue. And you're wow, we're an agency. And so that was kind of the first phase is it's just a group of people doing stuff for clients, quite unstructured. There's roles, but I'm involved in every client. Everyone reports to me, completely flat organization. That got us to, I don't know, probably 3 or 4 million in revenue. I would say kind of phase 2 was systematizing that, pulling myself out of the delivery for most of our clients, except for the very biggest ones. We had this kind of interesting in-between phase where because we did this over a pretty long period of time, like we had a good reputation. We had referrals. I was doing all the sales myself and all the kind of go to market myself. It's like a one-man growth team. And
for the whole time of the company.
No. So there's actually a really important kind of pivotal moment where I changed that. But I would say up until probably 4 or 5 million in revenue, it was like just me. Then I think kind of, the final phase, but before we sold, I saw that the e-commerce kind of services industry, if you want to call it that, was gonna get competitive. A bunch of people were jumping in. We were having ankle biters come up from the bottom. 1 person, 3-person shops didn't care about margin and could undercut us on price. Then we had the big guys jumping in, the holdcos and the consultancies spinning up divisions to try to go after this, buying some of our independently owned competitors. And it was like, okay, it's time to like get serious about this, make it into a quote unquote real business, and accelerate the top line growth. So at that point, I built out a full stack growth team. We went from like me doing sales to I think 8 or 10 people just on our growth team in about a year, and just hammered top line growth. And then we went from, I want to say probably like just to kind of give a reference point, I think we went from about like 4 to 12 million in 3 years. And that's kind of a whole story, but that's when the company really became like a real company. Executive team, I was mainly pulled out of delivery. We had a fully kind of up and running growth team, with a CRO who was great. And then that culminated really in me being able to exit the agency. So,
did you charge retainers or per project fees?
So this actually kind of evolved over time. Initially, we just charged commission, which was, again, for agencies, kind of a weird model, but we kind of, started more in like the broker sort of world. So that made more sense. That became problematic over time for a number of reasons. There may be still some sensitivity here. So that's probably all I'll say. It just became, I think it was actually a great model. It's very incentive aligned. It just became difficult from an actual business model perspective is what I'll say. So then eventually we kind of moved to more of a, like a retainer plus like a growth bonus model. And that actually felt like quite a bit more sustainable and kind of like scalable. And I think that's really where we ended up. And frankly, that's where most of the industry ended up as well. So it kind of became like the standard way of charging.
What was out of the 8 roles in the growth team? Did that include salespeople?
Correct. Yeah. So I think we had like 4 marketing people, 4 salespeople, a leader, and then like a kind of like a coordinator rev ops person.
And did you have the cash to pay all these people before you grew? Like you saved up some cash and you're like, okay, I'm going to make this X amount investment to grow top line.
I did, because the agency was very profitable. Because I had the foresight or luck or some combination of those two things to jump into Amazon when there was a massive difference between demand for expertise and supply of that expertise. We had very strong margins. And yeah, we could basically just afford to make basically like $1 million investment in growth. And, more or less, I don't want to say we hope it worked out. Like we phased into that, right? Like we hired a marketing person and that went well. And then we hired our first full-time salesperson and that went well. And then, so we did it over. We didn't just do it literally all at once, but.
You like scaled into the trade. Were you the solo founder?
Yes, I am. The starting story is actually sort of an odd one. So I like technically sort of founded the agency when I was 23 years old, but the longer version of this story is I got into it because I went to work for my late dad's company. At the time, so this was 2008, I was graduating college. I had no ability to get a job anywhere. It was impossible. I was going to starve. So I sort of reluctantly decided to go work for my dad. He had a manufacturer's rep firm, which was it was like a lifestyle business, but it was a great business. It was him, basically him and a couple people helping him out. And And I went in and he said like, hey, we have some clients that are interested in Amazon. You can do this on commission. I said, okay, sure. I'll work on commission. I moved back home. Like it was that thing. And so I had a super easy into this, right? Because it was like no risk, just like, sure, I'm 22 and I'll try this. And like it kind of worked. And I was able to figure out the space pretty quickly because it was very much a one-eyed man is king phenomenon. Like no one knew anything about Amazon at that time. And just knowing some stuff made me sort of, superior. And I had done door-to-door sales in college. So I started going to trade shows and I just ran this door-to-door sales playbook basically to get clients at like 23 years old, which I had like no business talking to. Like these are like big brands I was just walking up to like, hey, have you, would you want to get on Amazon? Do you need help? And most of them are like, no, kid, we're good. But a couple said yes. And I did it with enough scale where like a couple dozen a year said yes. And, making commission, like stacking these kind of clients up and the service at that time was very, very simple. It was like, we're going to set you up on Amazon was the service. So that's very, very early days. And then from there, I bought out my dad, spun the thing off, saw a bigger opportunity, and then actually turned it into like a real agency where we had like other services and we kept adding on more and more services and more people and more clients. And there you go.
At what point did you decide that maybe it was a good idea to sell the company?
I was burned out on e-commerce and running an agency. So it was a bit of a personal thing. I did see some real, I saw kind of both an opportunity and a risk happening at the same time. So the risk was I saw the industry maturing and I felt that independent agencies were going to get squeezed. Kind of what I described earlier, you're going to get pressure from both the bottom up and the top down in the market. And it was going to get much harder and much more competitive and difficult to sort of survive on your own. Because I felt that the commerce agencies that would thrive in the future would be those that were connected into other services. So that had full stack paid media, that had real creative, that had social media chops and presence and could work with influencers, et cetera. And, unless I was going to build that myself, which is like talking about building 1,000-person like AOR agency, which I didn't think I was going to do. I just felt like I need to like join up with someone who has all of those capabilities. So that was the opportunity. The risk was kind of trying to continue to go it on my own. And I just felt that combination of things was like, it was just very good timing. And then COVID happened. We were going to sell in 2021. And we were like, had this whole plan and we're getting like, audited financials and doing all the stuff you do to like prepare. We were like, we have a year and a half before we're even going to go to market. And then COVID happened. And a lot of people got very interested very quickly in, an Amazon agency. And it was like, all right, well, time is now. Let's do it.
I can see from LinkedIn that you spent roughly 3.5 years at Media Monks.
Yeah.
So I assume, maybe I'm wrong, there was some kind of earnout included in that deal.
Yeah, we had an earnout, but I actually stayed past the earnout. So I really enjoyed my time at Media Monks. I kind of, ended up running the global commerce division for a while with them. The earnout went well. We hit it. It was great. I would say I spent most of my time working on integrating into the other components of the business. So kind of what I just described as the opportunity, we tried to actually follow through on that. I think it went pretty well. I left because I retired. Like I actually didn't leave to do a different thing. I left because I was like, I'm not going to work ever again. And then that lasted like 3 months. But
yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah.
So you literally your intention upon leaving was that you were going to not ever work. So what were you planning on doing with your time?
Oh, I had lots of plans. I was going to like learn all these different hobbies and I was going to read all these books and tinker with a bunch of stuff. And actually it's that last thing. It's the tinkering that sort of led me into an advisory thing, which led me into a like more serious advisory thing and then seeing more opportunity. And then and then eventually just kind of, jumping back into the fray. But I guess the sort of the personal part of that is, I just got bored. I got bored. Hobbies, I don't know, this is just maybe a me thing. I had to figure this out for myself. Hobbies are great, but they're great as hobbies. Like if you try to like actually fill up your whole day with hobbies, it was a bit, I don't know, soul sucking.
Can you give an example of one of the hobbies?
Yeah. Okay. Like reading. Like I love reading. I've always been a reader. I read nonfiction. I read fiction. I like reading. Putting in a solid day's work, hanging out, reading a good book on the weekend, waking up in the morning, reading a book for a little bit. If you have some free time, that's awesome, right? If you sit in your home office by yourself in the middle of the day reading books, first of all, you're completely socially isolated. Like you're just alone. For like a long period of time, day after day after day. And two, it starts to feel vapid. It takes this thing that is enjoyable and makes it feel pointless. Again, just my experience. I'm sure there's some people that could do this and they would be just like so content. And honestly, I'm kind of jealous of people like that. But for me, it was, I looked back on the period of time where I was kind of retired, and I projected that out for 20 years. And I was like, if I do this for 20 years, like, and I look back and I go, this was most of my life, or maybe all of my life, I don't know. Would I be content with that? And the answer was just like, no, I think I'm kind of, that would be a waste. So that's where I ended up.
Makes sense. Let's move on to the current thing. So my first question is why launch 5 agencies in 2 years instead of 1 agency in 2 years?
Because there are a number of different domains that I'm interested in that I think have opportunity. And I believe that agencies, especially when they're small, and even when they're kind of, mid-sized, 100 people, et cetera, should be very niche focused. So if I were to launch one agency that did all of these things, I would be a massive hypocrite, and I don't think it would work. Because, we'd be going, hey, we're an agency with 8 people, and we have like these 17 different skill sets. And anyone who looks at that, who knows anything about agencies, is just going to go, no, you don't. Like you don't, because you can't actually be good at all of these things simultaneously. So instead of that, what we're trying to do is launch, these agencies that should all hopefully become pretty quickly 7-figure businesses, and all of the opportunity to become 8-figure businesses on their own, but that are all like very focused in a specific niche. The aim is there. I don't love the productized service concept because I think it gets overdone and can really water down like what you're actually providing in terms of value for clients. But there's sort of quasi-productized services that aim to kind of just offer a tremendous amount of value for the price in a very kind of like specific, focused way for their clients, and then go from there, right? And then hopefully like all of these things take this like very strong kind of starting point and foothold of a service. And then as they scale and get more resources, kind of expand out more and more. Eventually my assumption is they'll start kind of working with one another and cross-selling more. But yeah, that's kind of the starting point. Also, I'm very keen on this idea of not being the sort of in the weeds, like full on founding CEO of these things, which you can't do if you have 5 of them. It's impossible. So I'm hiring GMs to run them, right? And I'm going to be very involved in all of them. But it's also like, it's the GM's show, right? They're functionally like the CEO, and I'm more in like a executive chairman, like highly active chairman kind of role.
So how many have we worked on in the 2 years?
So we're super early. Like we basically just announced this. We haven't even announced the name or the website or anything yet, or websites, I should say. But so the first one we cheated on. My business partner, Garrett Cottle, founded an agency called Influent. It's a full service LinkedIn agency. Garrett was my former director of marketing, and LinkedIn and thought leadership was a huge part of the strategy at Orca. Very long story. He left Orca to start an agency to do the thing he did for me. And then I started advising with him, and then one thing led to another. And his kind of big vision of like all of these different opportunities in B2B was very aligned with mine. And so him and I said, hey, like, let's start this thing. So agency number one is already up and running. It's called Influent. It's doing very well. Garrett's still running that day to day. He's the founder and CEO. So the first kind of one we're starting from scratch is launching January 1st. It's going to be an outbound messaging agency, starting with email, then adding on social DMs, and then eventually, and maybe this is too science fiction, but I'm very interested in AI avatars and kind of the role that could play in asynchronous outbound messaging. So that's number two.
Do you have the GM lined up for that one?
We do, yeah. And I can't announce it yet, but yeah, we have a GM lined up for that one. We also are in the process of hiring a go-to-market engineer who's going to be like the technical whiz kind of behind the scenes. And they'll be we'll found that agency with those two people.
Will they have ownership of the entity?
They will be highly incentivized in the kind of overall success of the agency. Is kind of how I'll say it. Yeah. So we
right.
I'm a big believer in incentive alignment. I mean, just in general, I think it's actually maybe one of the single most important things any entrepreneur can do. If you just get like a bunch of great people and they're all incentivized to like accomplish the same stuff. I mean, I don't want to say you can do nothing, but like they'll just handle a lot of it if you get the right people in the right seats and they have the right incentives. So.
Got it. So the kind of parent company is yourself, and with it Gareth.
Garrett. Yeah.
Garrett. And he's currently full-time running agency number one.
Yeah.
And then your like role is going to be for 2 to 5 to find the GM.
Yeah.
I assume you already have the ideas for the remaining 4 and then get them sparked off.
I'm intentionally sort of diving deep into domains in order. So I would say I'm half baked on the remaining 3. There's domains I'm really interested in. I don't have the full sort of business model sorted though on any of them. And that's why the 2-year thing, right? Because I mean, I think it's really easy to start an agency as like a hyper productized service, like some really, really niche thing. And I think that's fine. But I do think it's kind of limiting, and you're probably gonna have really high churn. And like, so I do want to create these things even from day one that are kind of unique and multifaceted and differentiated and not just like, hey, we build like YouTube thumbnails as a service, like, which you could do and you could spin that up and get, $300,000 in ARR like really fast probably. But I just like, where do you go from there? So anyway.
So are you saying that the kind of less narrow the service you provide, potentially the higher retention because you have like more tentacles stuck into the client?
Correct. Yeah. So it's this balancing act. And I know probably people listening to this are going, wait, isn't this guy contradicting himself? Like, I do think you need to be niche focused. Like your domain, if your domain is your niche, I think that needs to be very focused. For example, Influent, right? First agency and Garrett's show, but we're very aligned on this. The niche is LinkedIn. It's like pretty straightforward. Like it's one platform, right? But then the services are actually pretty complex and multifaceted. And like, there's a lot of different kind of touch points. So it's not just like we build content on LinkedIn, it's messaging and it's, connections and it's the paid side. And it's all kind of like this cohesive approach to this niche. That's the thing because that's worthy of a service company, right? Like if your service in an agency is just like a thing that a person does and you could replicate it with a single person, like you're just going to have major churn issues. Because even if you're doing a good job, at some point, a client's just going to go, yeah, we could just hire a guy. We just hired a guy to do this now. Like you almost like prove the model for them and then they just hire somebody because you can just be that easily replaced. it needs to inherently be more kind of complex than that to have like to create like a real business out of it.
Exactly, because in the case of the LinkedIn agency, it's maybe unlikely that the client will be able to hire someone that can do like organic, paid, like
Correct.
outbound. Cool.
They would have to probably spend $300,000 or $400,000 in payroll to replace a service that costs 60 to 90 grand a year, right? So could they do it? Yes, I think so. They would also have to figure out the whole tech stack angle. They'd have to actually build some like custom code internally to do, some of the things. Could it be done? Yes, it could be done. Is that really where most companies want to, drop close to $500,000 a year when they already have like a fully up and running high quality service? Probably not, right? Maybe some will. But like that's a bet I'm willing to make, right? And I think like that similar kind of concept is where I want to build businesses in other domains.
Have you, or are you willing to share the domain for agency number 3?
So I'll share an idea. I don't know if it will be agency number 3. And again, this is loose. So anyone listening to this is going to be like, oh, I don't know, man. I'm very interested in performance PR and what I would call contemporary gatekeepers. So, the world of PR is this massive industry that's been around for 50 years. But we have this rapidly changing information and media landscape. More people are getting their news on TikTok than they are on cable news at this point. I don't know, that's not a real stat, but like just as an example, right? Like the world is changing very quickly. So, traditional PR, I think oftentimes is more of an ego play. It's like, and I know this because I did this. Like at Orca, we had a PR push and I was featured in the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times and the Washington Post and a bunch of like, sort of like TechCrunch-esque publications, right? And honestly, I don't think it did anything for our business. Like, and then I would like go to some industry, like webinar with 80 people on it. And it would drive like 3 clients and we would close $500,000 in business. Like, so I think one is like the performance nature of PR. How do you like fix that? And then 2 is like, go where your audience actually is. That's the sort of concept. What the specific service is, I don't know yet, but I think there's something there. And I think that would be if you could package that up in a way that you can just go like, hire us, we'll just handle it. It will handle it. It's fully done for you. Yes, we need like your executive or your founder to be involved in this to a degree, right? Because it's their likeness and ideas, et cetera. But like the rest is fully packaged up, team around you, will handle everything. You pay us our rate. It's measurable. We'll provide reporting. We'll provide attribution. Like, I think I think there's something there. I just don't exactly know what it is. By the way, if anyone wants to run that thing and thinks they're, an expert, hit me up.
We'll link to John below. How did you find the GM for the second one?
The GM for the second one, I knew through a pre-existing relationship. It's a little sensitive, so that's all I'll say for now.
For sure. And then probably my final question is about the role of technology in these. You mentioned there's going to be a tech partner. I assume there's going to be some kind of tech like infused into all of them.
Correct. Yeah. So my belief generally, and I'll certainly apply this to these agencies, is I do think agencies should have internal technology. I think they should understand that the market will create a lot of value and innovation, SaaS and other tech that you can sort of buy off the shelf should absolutely be part of your strategy, because an agency thinking they can be a SaaS company is a very dangerous thing. So my philosophy is this: take the best of what's out there, but then inevitably that's not going to be enough to fully achieve your goals for your clients. And then take that tech stack and then build kind of around that and within that to then create additional kind of real proprietary technology that you can then offer to your clients, will help amplify your service, but also help just create more quality and stickiness in your service. So yeah, Influent already has proprietary tech. We're already thinking about it for agency 2. It will absolutely be part of the kind of business model for all of these agencies.
And so you wouldn't recommend an agency that built some proprietary tech around the best-in-class tools to then sell that separately. It should only be for clients.
There are a trail of bodies of companies that have tried to do this. There are a couple notable examples where they did it successfully. So I don't want to say it can't be done. I mean, there are people that are probably on yachts right now because they successfully made this leap. That being said, I know personally at least 10 stories of people trying to do this. Here's what I would say. If they do want to do it, you have to spin it off as a separate company with separate funding, separate P&Ls, separate leadership, et cetera. Doing it internally could absolutely destroy your agency, and I've seen it happen multiple times. Spinning it off is something that you could try, but it probably won't work, but you could try it. And then, you have 2 companies, right? Like you probably, if you're an agency entrepreneur, unless you're a technical person, which you're probably not because you already would have just started a SaaS company if you were. If you're an agency guy like me and not technical, probably just keep running the agency. If you do think the thing you built internally really could be SaaS, find a CEO, do a seed round, whether it's you or other people, and run it like a traditional kind of SaaS company as a separate entity. That's my very, very strong from actual real experience advice on this.
John, I appreciate you coming on and being so open. We're going to link to your LinkedIn below. I don't think if anything else we can link to regarding the new stuff, we'll link to Influent.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Anything
no
else?
Website yet for the other stuff. No, just I think Influent and LinkedIn is great for now. And then, my goal here is to do this a little more in public than I did last time. So I don't know if I'm going to be releasing my, financials, but I'm going to try to be more public. So if anyone's interested in this journey and wants to see if I, win or fall on my face, follow and hopefully it'll be entertaining. So.
And LinkedIn is the best place to follow.
Yeah, that's my home base. Yeah, I've tried X and I've given up, I think.
John, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. This was great.